right, welcome everyone to lesson 3. And yes, I did have to settle for a less expensive webcam. We lost the budget, is what happened. I'm kidding. I didn't want to get out my phone to do this one and yada yada yada. Let's get started with building this. So I'm just gonna go straight into it. We have our architecture from last time. Here's how I'm gonna do it. We're gonna start off with a generic prompt to Cursor, and I actually like doing this. By the way, I'm just in a brand new. I'm using Cursor. I'm in a brand new directory in my very full, very disorganized coding folder. You do not need to use Cursor for this. I actually recommend the Void Editor, which is a free open source IDE that allows you to input your own API keys or to use local models and stuff like that. Void Editor did not exist when I bought a Cursor subscription, so I use Cursor instead. But it really doesn't matter whether you're using Cursor or whether you're using Void or whether you're just prompting some AI or you're using Claude Code or Codex or whatever. It's your poison. What we're going to do follows through with any given method of attack that you're using. You literally just ask ChatGPT and then just copy and paste the information in that ChatGPT says. So we're going to make a markdown file here called architecture, where we are going to describe in plain text this. We're going to explain in plain text this. So there's going to be a lot of writing, and I'm probably going to skip a lot of this, but you'll see what I have written out in the end. All right, so I have finally finished typing up a storm of a paragraph that basically everything I wrote here is in words what this is, right? So I say we're making a RAG-based chatbot using Python Streamlit. That we are. We'll have the standard app components architecture of all Streamlit projects, where our components will include a document loader, vector store, and a chatbot UI. We'll also want a data folder where we can input the data, so similar to what we're doing over here, where we want the chatbot to be trained on. I made the executive decision that we're going to use self-serve keys for the sake of this portfolio project demo. Obviously, if you're going into production, you'll use your own OpenAI key, and they'll just do a restricted key or something and put it in a .env. But in this case, we don't have to worry about the dot environment, and we can just self-serve locally, where there is no transmission over the network of these keys. So there's no worry that a key will be taken. And then in a similar vein, we want it to be easily deployable to GitHub and Streamlit because it's a portfolio project. Exactly. So now when I prompt Cursor, all I'm going to say is, please write the code for the app described in the architecture.md file. Let's generate it and let's see how good our first generation is. So if this is your very first time using a coding agent to code an app, it almost never works the first time, especially for something as new as a RAG-based agent. This is essentially in a way, this is the AI creating itself. So basically, the AI that we're using has to be a very new version to the point where it knows what we're asking for when we ask it to make a RAG-based chatbot. And apparently it does because it's making all the files. So let's see how closely they followed through with what we've kind of talked about in our architecture in our previous courses. So we have the requirements.txt, previous lessons, I should say. The README, so it always makes a README, which is perfectly fine. We're going to create the directory structure in the main application files. So we have the initialization, the configuration, the helpers. These are probably, if I had to guess, these are Streamlit files. I don't want to deep dive into the code just yet. All right, well, let's see. So this is following pretty closely with what we created as our architecture, and we will dive into all this code once it's all done and we can verify that that's working. I will say, I think I mentioned this before, I've never used Streamlit for a Python program, so I'm going to be really excited to do that as well. So I don't have any of these dependencies. We'll have to download the required dependencies. So it supports txt, pdf, docx, and md, which is exactly what I expect. So this, I think it added an upload via web interface, which is kind of interesting. That's going to give us a deployment guide for Streamlit Cloud. Like I said, I'd like to test it locally before we do any of that. So according to this, we could just do python run.py. But if we want to do a manual start, we would have to do pip install our requirements, which usually, and then streamlit run app.py. Let me just look over what it said. So it's going to try the import, but if it finds that you don't have the dependencies installed already, it's going to try and run the pip install command. It's going to make the data folder if the data folder doesn't exist yet, and then it launches the Streamlit app. Okay, so that's pretty much the same thing. We really don't need this quick start script, and I'm gonna delete mine because I don't know if your engine created a quick start script for you, and I really don't think we need this. So we're gonna do this the manual way, which is it's not gonna take that much longer. And in fact, I need to make a working inventory for this. If I can ever remember the command that I've used a billion times. On Windows, you want to do python venv my environment. So I'll create a virtual environment so that all of our files, all of our dependencies stick within here, because if we try to just download all the dependencies, it can go into whatever folders and it can cause errors. So if we have a virtual environment within this specific folder, it's not going to come across those issues as commonly, where it might download one of our dependencies there, one of our dependencies there. Now we know exactly where all of our dependencies need to be. And this is actually what like if you've ever made a web app npm install does this. So I'm gonna run pip install requirements.txt. A classic beginner problem to have is that your pip is not working. There's a bunch of different reasons for why your pip might not be working, but usually it's because you either don't have Python installed, or if you have Python installed, your IDE and your pip or your Python isn't connected together. So usually it's one of those two things, that you either don't have Python installed, or your Python install got corrupted for whatever reason, or more commonly, your IDE isn't detecting the right version of Python, and there needs to be a version of Python that's connected to your IDE, which you'll have to do whatever your IDE says to do to connect it to your local Python install. But anyway, I did see that we had an error here. It doesn't look like it's related to the pip. Okay, so it says cannot install requirements.txt OpenAI 1.37 because these packages have conflicting dependencies. Oh, it might have installed from a different? That's my guess. Let me comment that out. The OpenAI requirement. Yeah, it said it already installed and downloaded OpenAI, so I wonder if it's already working. Well, let me try running the app. That's probably the best way to figure out if... My guess is that it tried running OpenAI, or it went down the list, it installed OpenAI by itself, but then there was another thing that as a dependency needed OpenAI anyway. Well, usually it doesn't give you that error, so I don't know. But we'll see. Let's run it and let's find out what happens. So Streamlit is not recognized as a file, which means it did not install Streamlit properly. And the goal for this lesson is to just get the app loaded and turned on. That's what our goal is for this lesson, and the next lesson is going to be debugging, where we actually fix everything. It seems like it's working. No, it was unrelated. We just keep getting rid of them until I... We'll just play whack-a-mole for these. That's my guess for this issue, is that we have dependencies that are trying to install OpenAI and TikTok and all these other ones. And so when we just already have installed them, it creates an issue where it's like, I don't understand what's happening here. But we'll see if that's true. I feel like we would have gotten an error. Whoa, now it's going crazy. Okay, I think we fixed it. If I had to guess, because it's really going now. Oh my god, I just realized something that I really screwed up on. Did we switch to the environment? Are we on the environment that we created? We are on the environment we created, right? There's no way I didn't switch to the environment. We're gonna have to redo all of this. I screwed up. As it happens, this is part of the coding process. I was supposed to enable the my environment, the my-env from the venv, as they say, as they do say that this is installing to my local directory. So this is what I'm saying, where it could cause problems because I didn't install to the virtual environment that we had created. We could still try and run it, but my guess is, and I bet that's the reason when I typed Streamlit run, it wasn't able to detect it, even though Streamlit was installed. That's a classic error for this sort of thing. Now, I don't even know. It seems like it's stalled out anyway. So it's like virtual environment is venv, and then my env is obviously my environment. which is just a naming convention. You don't have to call it my environment. And my guess is that us commenting OpenAI and TikToking is still gonna work for this, because that's an error that's just related to what's on the requirements TXT. It's not related to my issue with not correctly setting up the Python environment. So now when we look at this, we actually see all these getting added over time, and hopefully once this is done, we'll actually use, because now it's not going to need to reinstall. Because before it got stun locked because I was trying to uninstall and reinstall NumPy, so it shouldn't matter. It's just downloading a lot of dependencies. Yes, I'm actually curious. Does it mention OpenAI on here? Oh, OpenAI. Yeah, it is on here. And TikTokin's on there as well. So, by the way, TikTokin, as far as I know, not related to TikTok, even though the name is very similar. That is for tokens. So, tokenizing a transformer, I believe. I see how we're going to handle the docx files. I see. I'm just looking around at all these WebSocket. Oh, do we have Streamlit? That one seems pretty important. So my guess is is it still installing all these? Oh, it sure looks like it's still installing stuff. So many dependencies. It's basically like installing mods for a video game when you think about it. Oh, there we go. So let's see if it runs. Because like I said, our goal for me, my goal for getting out of here is that I give you something that runs. Welcome to Streamlit. That's a great sign. Helpful onboarding emails, news, offers, promotions, absolutely not. And localhost 8501. All right, so we have been able to get this to run. I know we have an error already, but that is to be expected. And it is something that we're going to cover in our debugging step. But we'll know made with Streamlit down here. This is an error that we get within the deployment zone. So if you've ever, once again, if you've ever done Node.js, React, anything in that space, if you successfully open the app, if you successfully deploy the app, but there is an error with your code, it'll come up as an error like this. So obviously we're not done, which I would expect so. It's only lesson 3. But now that we have the initial build done, and now that we have our dependencies all settled, and everything is deploying properly, it's running correctly in the terminal, we can move on to the debugging step, where we try and get at the module Streamlit has no attribute upload file, which I feel like I already understand what's happening here, because why would it have an attribute called upload file? It sounds like that's supposed to be a local variable. I don't want to talk about that too much yet. We're going to cover that in lesson 4. So, see you then.